Alex Jones.
We are back. It's the Infowars with Jason Bermas. I'm sorry, it's the Alex Jones Show with the Infowars sitting in. I get so used to that. It's terrible for me. We were just discussing some of the other candidates out there outside of Deborah Medina. Obviously, everybody who's listening locally, we hope that you go out, you support Medina, you get involved. Like I said, get involved with the exit polling, folks. Get involved right now with knocking on your neighbors' doors and saying, hey, have you heard about this candidate? Are you watching this election? Do you plan to vote? And if they don't plan to vote, that's the person to rally on. Say, listen, we got some real issues right now. You need to be voting, and you need to be voting for this person for these reasons. And you just need to step by step. It's like I said earlier. You catch a lot more flies with honey. You can usually, if you have any kind of discernment, you walk up to a home, you see the car they're driving, you see who answers the door. Right off the bat, you should be able to intellectually tell how you can at least talk to this person for a little bit longer, what you need to say to this person to get them interested, not only in voting, but in your candidate. And again, it comes down to us becoming human beings again.
That's right.
We're so detached from society in this text message, Twitter world. Everything's through Facebook. Everything's through an IM or an email. We don't pick up the phone and call our parents anymore. We email them. And we don't talk to our neighbors at all anymore.
And Jason, you bring up some great points. I'll tell you, I could address several issues that you just brought up in the commentary you just made. But we need to build basically two social networks. One of them is on the web. But, it's just like you talked about earlier in the show. The web is subject to being cut off at a moment's notice. We know that's run through the Pentagon. They can flip the switches and all of a sudden no more web. It's going to be a hard one to get over on the American public because we're used to the freedom of the Internet and the free speech that we have on it. But the second parallel social network that we need to build is exactly what you're talking about, is working within our precincts, in our neighborhoods, so to speak, to where we've got people on board that we know what they're thinking about. We know they're constitutionalists. We know they're patriots. We know they're about God-given rights, and get them on board. And that's what I see happening out there is people are getting connected. We're going to build the biggest grassroots patriot network ever. And that's what's happening, because I can give you an example. In an election that I was involved in 2006, there was one lady named Susan Gary up in a town called Copeland, Texas, that's just south of Taylor, Texas, in Williamson County. And she knew the people in her precinct, in her neighborhood, so well that our candidate, despite the fact that Barbara Samuelson, our patriot candidate in that race, was poorly funded, we had less than $10,000, and we were up against one of the juggernauts at the state rep, here in Texas, that had probably in the neighborhood of $100,000 for a state race, for a state representative seat race. And this lady, Susan Gary, single-handedly brought in about 70% of the vote. And that's the kind of grassroots networks that we're going to be able to build. The question is not a matter of if we build it, it's a question of when we build it, because that's what's happening, is that people are getting connected, they're getting out of their neighborhoods, and if we have that level of ground troops, so to speak, then we can dominate in these elections. We can dominate on the ballot. See, another way to get around black box voting, and this is one of the things I've been talking about on a variety of programs that I get to do, is that we can beat black box voting by being the grassroots that's so in control that we proffer up these candidates. Look at this slate of candidates. I don't know if you can zoom in on that. Mm-hmm. And I'm not interested
Let's get that, guys.
Whether or not if people can read that entire slate or not, because what's important is that list of patriot names that are running in all these different races. You've got people running for the Supreme Court. You've got people running for state representative seats. I think we've got some patriots running for state Senate seats. We've got people running for precinct chairs. We have got patriots running for all these different offices, and it doesn't stop there, because what you got to remember is it's like when Deborah Medina is going out to these town halls or these debates or whatever, that's just another info warrior out there getting the message of liberty, Constitution, freedom, property rights, etc. Each one of these is a warrior out there, a soldier, if you will, in the ground war, educating the public. Every town hall they do, every time they get to speak with their neighbors, they are info warrioring. And what better way than to multitask? You know how the New World Order, it seems like everything they do has a multifaceted approach. I mean, you look at 9/11, they destroyed Building 7 because it's loaded up with all kinds of government secrets that they don't want to get out of the bag. Well, here's how we can info warrior in a multifaceted manner, is by these candidates stepping up. And here I am in Travis County. Jason, it's gotten so big that I really feel in my heart that this kind of level of activity is going on nationwide now. It's just there's so much of it going on. There's no way to keep track of or know about it. But I'm very encouraged. It looks like in Kentucky, Rand Paul is probably going to win his Senate primary and most likely go on to win a Senate seat. So I'm thinking that what we're going to have, success to me in this election coming up would be to see at least 100 incumbents at the U.S. rep level get fired. Whether they're Republican or Democrat, I don't care. I just want to see 100 incumbents lose their seats. And a lot of those, the Achilles heel can happen right in the primary. And if we've got patriots involved in both parties, then we can be pulling the trigger and firing incumbents in these primaries. That's the Achilles heels, because once you get to these general elections, it's harder to fire incumbents, because in most gerrymandered districts, you've got a bias. You throw in any Democrat, and it doesn't matter what his views are, then, he could be patriot or he could be Satan, but a Democrat's going to win in that district. Same thing in some districts with a Republican. You've got a Republican bias. So that's why I say the Achilles heel to the New World Order, they've got a variety of Achilles heels, but in the political process, these primaries is the Achilles heel.
Well, I think if the people that are listening to this program or are aware of what's going on trade in their apathy for action, then we can do wonders. Again, people have to realize that they have great power themselves. That doesn't mean that you necessarily have to run for city council or state senate or Congress, but help somebody that is going to be for the Constitution, individual rights, sovereignty, the constitutional republic we live in, not just democracy. Democracy is a word that's thrown around to really paralyze us and put us in a position where we don't know what to do. Democracy, like they say, is 51% of the population telling the other 49% that they have to go to the camps. That's not what this country was founded on. There's a reason we have states' rights. There's a reason we used to have a separation of powers. 3 branches of government. It was called checks and balances. We no longer have it in the national security state, but we had an executive branch, which is just totally corrupt with power right now. We had a judicial, and we had a legislative, and they were supposed to get on one another. But what we've seen is this consolidation of power through the military-industrial complex, and it just keeps growing and growing and growing and growing and getting bigger. And I had a couple callers earlier, if you were listening to the show, that said, I'm just so overwhelmed by this information. I don't know what to do. So we've already traded in their apathy. They've gone away from, there's, no big deal. We're in Afghanistan. We're in Iraq. I see people don't even realize we're still in 2 wars. It's just like every day. When Bush was in, it was a big deal. We had anti-war demonstrations all the time, but the savior comes in and the left, Code Pink, all the frauds refuse to step out into the streets. And then the real deal, Cindy Sheehan, rises above it all. Right. She's out in D.C. right now, trying to get a tent city going of protesters, and now the left hates her. They refuse to talk about her. The mainstream media won't even cover her. People need to realize that this is a system of command and control, and they will use and have used and continue to use well-meaning, good people to continue their agenda. So we have to be aware of that. And again, let's just trade in the apathy for action. Knock on doors, make phone calls, get out there, make posters. I know there's a lot of talented artists out there. Make some posters, get out in the streets. I know there's a lot of talented graffiti artists out there. And I've heard more and more lately in, the city of London and the city of New York and Chicago. People are spray painting Infowars.com, prisonplanet.tv, and getting people aware. There's guerrilla activism. There's so much each and every one of us can do.
That's right. If we just stepped up to the plate, that's when we start to win. And you made some great points by saying that the people just need to get off their apathy. I think we really are. I had a caller one day saying that the independents in Connecticut are at about the 50% threshold. That independents, patriot-minded people, constitutionally-minded people are at the 50% threshold. I think that's a nationwide phenomenon. And what ends up controlling the Republican Party and the Democrat Party are only about 2 or 3% of the people end up controlling those. So if these patriots just divvied them up amongst themselves and got into the Democrat Republican parties, libertarians, keep your positions in the Libertarian Party. Don't let these neocons and New World Order folks get back into power there, then the activism that you're talking about will work, and that's just it. We are big enough to do that. I'm convinced of that fact because I've seen the numbers continue to grow. I've watched these elections continue to grow our numbers, and there's just no stopping us. The question is, will we be allowed to have time? And for the folks that don't want to get involved, there is nowhere to run or nowhere to hide. Alex says this on his show frequently, that he would go off to some other country if there were another place to go to.
Nowhere to go.
But there's nowhere to go. This is it. This is the time to make your stand. And the time to make your stand is not when the bullets start to fly. It is too late at that point. From that point of view, I think that the war has been lost by us if we see bullets start flying. That's where we've got an opportunity right now, and this is it. We need to take it. We need to move forward and keep people activated. And they're coming. They're coming that way.